Hi, welcome back to another CSS Basics tutorial where I teach you the basics of CSS or cascading style sheets. We use CSS to go along with our HTML websites in order to create beautiful websites. So CSS helps us to control the layout. It also helps us to control what things look like, so colors and textures and size and images and things like that. So today we're going to get into the background properties of CSS. Now backgrounds can be placed on almost any element uh, in your HTML. Today we have a little simple setup here with a header. So we're using the HTML5 semantic tag called the header. A header could be the header, the navigation bar at the very top of your page. It could be the title of a section. It could be all kinds of things. It's kind of a generic term that just means this is the top content of this section. Inside of that we have something called site title. It's just an H1, a heading 1 tag, and it's inside of our header. I have some basic body styles here. They're going to help us along the way. You can look at those. All this does is takes away, there's a slight margin on, between the body and the outside here. We need the height so that we can see the scrolling action in just a minute. This margin takes any space away from the H1 title. If we don't have that, you can see that our H1 title gets a little space around it, and that starts to get kind of wonky whenever we start putting background colors and background images. And then our header, we need to place some sort of height on it. So 50 VH, VH stands for the viewport height. So as this will always stay the same because we're not changing the height of the viewport, so it'll always be 50%. It'll be half. So 100 viewport height is 100%. So it divides up the viewport height into 100 units, and this takes up 50 units, which is half, right? So that's 50% essentially. It's a very handy unit to have, especially for mobile design. And we'll talk about that unit. Maybe I'll try to do a units video so I can go through some of the different units that are available to you as far as measurement, because you can see here I'm using pixels and I'm using viewport height. If I were doing margin here, I could do the same thing. I could base it on the text size, or I could base it on pixels or viewport height. So there's all kinds of different measurements that we can use that do different things and determine how everything is laid out or presented. Well, let's get into our header properties. If we go over here to w3schools.com and their CSS background properties, you see that there are several properties. These are the most basic ones, so I'm going to go over these, and these will take you pretty far. There are actually a lot more background properties. Some are experimental, some are ones that you can use. These are definitely background properties that you are able to use now, and they have good support among all the browsers, including mobile. So that's why I'm going to show you these, and these are the ones that I use the most often in the commercial work that we do. So let's start off first with one of the easier ones, which is background color. So the way we declare it is we say background dash color colon, and then we just choose a color. Red is easiest to choose, and so just like that, because the height is half of the screen width, right? It's always going to take up half. So then it fills in that whole header block full of color. So you could also use any sort of hexadecimal code here to achieve the same thing. If you understand RGBA, you could do that, or you could just do the RGB color. RGBA is a little bit different. Let's see. Let's find the RGBA color of red. Okay, so all I've done is I've searched for CSS color picker, and on Google at least, it has this really handy little tool here to help you with colors or choosing colors. So it tells you the hexadecimal code, and then it tells you the RGB color. So normally RGB is red, green, and blue. It's the same thing as the hexadecimal. This is red, and the middle two are green, and then the last two are blue. It's just that they're using a different value here. So the RGB color for red should be 255 because that's the largest number that we can use, and then 0, and then 0. So that should also give us red, a pure red. So it's red, green, and blue. So when you're looking at RGB, red, green, blue, then these are the different values here. So you can use any number of things. You can use RGBA, and then that gives you an extra one on here. So if we did like 0.8, then it gives you, the A is called an alpha channel, and alpha just means transparency. So if you wanted to put some color over the top of something, or you wanted it to be a lighter color, or darker depending on what color background it was over, then you can add a transparency channel as well. So I use this all the time in my work, so it's just something I want to introduce you to, and that's a little bit more advanced, but just to let you know that that's available as well. Right now we're just going to use red and go on with that. Okay, so the next property is background image. So this one's really fun. For a long time, we only were able to place images up into the HTML with the image source, just like we've done before. But now we can place images in the background of our CSS, in the background of our elements. So I just have a few images already picked here. Let's go with this one. And all you have to do is you have to find the URL of the image that you want. Now remember, we could go to do like an image search. I love mountains, so I'll just go with the mountains. I prefer, whenever I'm doing things and I do a Google image search, to go and do the usage rights and do label for reuse. That way I know that I'm using something that someone has already, a photographer has said, hey, anybody can use this, you're not going to get in trouble if you have that. I don't believe I'm going to get in trouble for having anything on this, for this particular website. But if you were using something for a production website, you would want to make sure that you could use all of the images that you have. So it either needs to be yours, or it needs to be something that has been labeled to reuse. Right? So the way we do that is we click on the image and don't visit the page, but view the image, and the image should have the URL where the image is being hosted, and you can just copy that and you can paste that in. So that's kind of a quick and easy way to be able to find an image for your website. Okay, it's there. It's hard to see, but we're seeing this part of the sky up here because the image is very large. So we're going to take care of that in a moment. But all you have to do is do URL, parentheses, and then inside that you actually put the URL where the image resides. If it's on your own system, then you would do something like background image URL. Let's say it was in a folder called assets, and then inside that folder is one called images, and then, you know, whatever you would use. So whatever the name of your file is. So you would just do kind of a relative link there. This was if your website was on your own web server, and then you had the image on your own web server in a folder. It would be inside these folders, and you would just call it like that. But ours is on the web, and so we're going to do it like this. And let's look at the next property. The next property is background repeat. And background repeat, we have a few different options here. One is the default is repeat, and what that means is if the background is a very small image. In fact, let's find a nice repeating background. Let's see if we can get something pulled up here. So if the background can repeat, it's not huge. This image is huge. But if the background is small and your image is small, too small for the space, what it will do by default is it will create one, and then right next to it it'll create another and another and another until it fills up all the space that you've given it, horizontally and vertically. Now, the easiest thing for us to do would be to say no dash repeat, and then that would just leave the image presented in its normal size one time. And then if we can also do repeat dash X, and then that will repeat it only horizontally, not horizontally and vertically, but only horizontally. And then if we only wanted to repeat Y, that's the Y axis here, and so it would only repeat going down, so it would be one here, one here, one here. So that's a little bit of a different type of property, and this was the way that people used to do backgrounds, full page backgrounds, a long time ago with patterns, and it's still a really good way to do repeating background patterns even right now. If you were using an image, then the image itself would just be repeated over and over. I'm having an issue loading the page here. Not sure what that's about. Okay, let's find just not that was big. So let's exchange our mountain for a repeating tile here. Now you can see this is the size of our tile. It's repeating Y. Let's just leave the background repeat out. So you can see here that it's repeated all the way across and it's all the way down. So that's the default. If we say no repeat, then it should give us only one instance of this background. No repeat. There we go. Okay, so that's the size of our actual image here, and it's not repeating. So if we do repeat, then that's going to repeat all the way across, and you knew there was some space here, so it is repeating vertically, but it probably just comes down like under here, you can't see it. If we only do repeat X, then you see that it only repeats across the X-axis horizontally and leaves the space here where it's not filling it in on the Y. And if we do repeat Y, then it should only fill it up over here. There we go. So it's only filling it up on the y-axis. It's repeating, it stops about here and then it starts another one down here, but it's not going across the page. So and it's showing our original background color, so you know that that's the truth. So this is background repeat, and again, if you wanted to create a background for your entire body or the full page, it would be great. You have a small image that just repeats over and over and over again. That way the user only has to download one small image and not a huge, desktop sized image. This was always the crux of the matter a long time ago when the web was a lot slower than it is I want to fill up the entire background of the page, but I don't want to have to download this huge file, because the download speeds were very it just took a long time to download images a long time ago, before we had broadband. So that was the way that we got around it, was to do small little tiles. And then you can make your tiles do all kinds of different things to create some different textures and shapes, which was really helpful and created some more visual interest to the website. Okay, the next property is called background attachment. So for the moment we're just going to say no repeat, and then we're going to replace this with an actual image. Let's just use this one. So we have an actual image in there, which just on its own adds a lot of visual interest, because you can see the advantage of putting it in the background as opposed to putting it into the HTML is now we can layer things over the top of it inside of our div. So this is the power of applying the CSS background. So when we do background dash attachment, attachment means, is it attached to the normal flow of the website, or is it detached from the normal flow of the website? So the default is to be something called scroll. Now what scroll does is, you see how the background goes with the page. That's why I had the page so tall, so we could see that. If we use another property called fixed, then we're able to have something called parallax. You may have heard of parallax, but this is a super easy way to be able to add it to your website. And you can see that the image stays fixed to the background, but the rest of the website, it's like it gets detached from the website. And so now you have a super easy parallax. So this is moving over the top of it, you can see, and then the background itself stays fixed. So if you want to add some sort of parallax scrolling effect over an image, then that's how you would do it. And then our last property is called background position. And then actually it's the next to last. I'll show you another one in just a moment. So background position is, we normally use words like keywords, so top and right. So this takes the top right portion of the picture and makes it the centerpiece of the picture. So whenever we go like this, the part that's showing when it's too small is going to be the top right. We could do the top left, and then it would shift our image to the top left. You see how that works? So whenever we resize the image, it might show everything, but when it gets smaller, what we're going to focus on is the top left part of the picture. We could do the center, so that what stays in focus is the center left part of the picture. Or you could do the center bottom. That's not right. Bottom, center, want to say it is the this is the x-axis, so oh, there it goes. Yeah, so it did it eventually. So the bottom center is the focus of the picture here, and this becomes really important in responsive design, because then you can choose which part of the picture that you want to be able to see. And I'll show you the picture in just a moment so you can see every part of it. Actually, I'll show you now. So there's one more property. It's called background size, and this determines what size the background is. Now we can use something called contain, and what contain does is it takes the whole picture and it tries to, let's take this one out, it tries to put the entire picture, as much as it can, it tries to fit it into the space that you have available. So this is the entire picture. You can see we've been looking at these parts over here, but it tries to contain the image to the width and height that are available to it. There's another property called, a value called cover, and what cover does is it stretches the picture out so that it covers all of the space of the div. Right, so our div is 100% wide, and so it stretches the picture and kind of blows it up. You can see how the picture, it gets larger, trying to cover all the space. So this is one of the ways that we can create responsive images. So at this size it looks good, and as the sizes get bigger, it still stretches to be able to match that. Now when you have this, you can see that it's going to be really important that you wind up showing the part of the image that you really want to show. So you would want to, if you did something like center center, then it would show the middle of the image, and that would be the focus all the time. So when it gets bigger, it focuses on the center of the image. But if you did center like left and centered, let's give it a second here, see when it kicks in, then the focus will become the left part of the page. Right now the center of the image is still the focus of the page. There it goes. Okay, but now when we get it down to a mobile size, then the center, the left part of the image and the center, those are the main parts of the page. Okay, so you can see that you can choose which area of the page, and if you want to get more into this position here, or this property here, you can. There are you can use percentages so that you can really fine grain, move the image around to exactly where you want it at different positions or different screen sizes. So that's a really versatile property. And I'm going to show you one more. So we have a bunch of properties here. We can actually combine all of these properties together. So the way that we would do that is just with one simple background property. So background colon, and we can actually remove these, and we can say the first one, these are the order, this is the order that this goes in. So what we're going to do is we're going to string together all these properties just in, or all these values just inside of one property instead of having a bunch of properties here. So first we say red, and then space, and then URL, and then we're going to put our URL here. And then we'll do another space, and we say no repeat, space fixed, space left, space center. And that should provide us with exactly the same thing that we had before. It's just that we do it in one single property here. It'll allow me to see everything. You can see that it's all on one line. So what this does is it saves you several lines of code. You can imagine if you have this all throughout your code that you're saving tens or dozens of lines uh, inside of your code, which speeds up your code and makes it a little bit faster. So if you can put everything on one line, then that's really great. If you take off one part, let's say we didn't want this image, we could take that off and then it would just show us the red image here. But then we wouldn't need these properties really. So you could just do a background red. You wouldn't need this property because when it's a color, it's just going to automatically fill that entire space with color. So instead of using background color red, you could just say background red and be able to do that as well. Okay, so this is the background property. You can use this for any elements. It's great with semantic elements to be able to use those as the background and the backdrops, so that inside of those semantic elements you can begin to create, use it as kind of a container, and then you can put lots of different things over the top of it. So if you wanted to add some text, then you could also do that. So you can see that you could put those things over just a nice color box, or you could put text over top of an image. That's normally how it's done in like a hero or a header section of a website. They have a background property, and then they have text or images or whatever over the top of it. Even video you could put over the top of it. So it's a really useful, very handy property. It makes things infinitely more beautiful on the web, and I hope that you play around with it a little bit. You could do full screen color like this, where you can see that it's full height, full width color. So that's a really cool kind of look. You could do the same thing with the image itself. So it's a way to create that you could create images that are full screen and full width. So you can see that. And then our text, you would have to style it to be a lighter color so that it would show up, but you could have text over a full width image, which is a look that I personally really like. And then you have some sort of parallax scrolling still because we added that in. So you can very quickly get to some cool modern web design patterns just from this background property. So I hope that you really take, if you need to watch it again, but I encourage you to play around with it and play around with adding different elements and images to the background, and playing with things like repeat or the different types of sizes as far as contain or cover and that type of thing. But thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. I'd be happy to help you with them and help you with any issues that you might be having. And if not, then I'll see you in the next video.